within our hour. We're going to try to go through just the main practical points. Review guide for Chanukah. Obviously, there's a whole book that follows on these points. So we're obviously not going to be able to delve into all the details during this hour and all the different opinions and all the interesting background. We can read those. We're celebrating the miracle of the oil. The oil lasted for 8 days. Problem. There are many, many miracles that happen during temple, pre-temple, and post-temple period. Some less qualities. We see that there's actually 3 reasons behind Chanukah. First and foremost is what we read in Al Nisim. Pay attention to the nusach, the wording of Al Nisim that we all are going to start saying tonight in Shemona Esrei for the next 8 days, and in Birchas HaMazon for the next 8 days. Does it mention anywhere there about candles, miracles, oil? Does it say anything about that information?
It just talks about the war.
Oh, it talks about the war. So obviously we can't say that the whole purpose or reason and motivation of the holiday is simply the oil miracle, as it didn't even make it to the prayer that sanctifies the holiday.
It made it with the morning.
So obviously we can't say that that is the only factor. And one of the factors is the day of the Milchama, the fact that Hashem handed over Merubim b'yad ma'atim, many in the hands of few, and we were few both in terms of Gentiles versus Jews, and few also in terms of observant Jews versus non-observant Jews. There were very, very few Jews left that were actually still dedicated to God in His Torah, and majority of Yidden, unfortunately, had become Misyavnim. They Hellenized themselves, became Hellenists. So this is a tremendous miracle that we're celebrating. Number one, the fact that the Torah, the flame of Torah, was not extinguished, and that the holiness of Torah was kept intact, and that the Jewish people as a whole retained sovereignty over Eretz Yisrael for the next 200 some odd years till the destruction of the Second Temple. So these are some of the main reasons behind the celebration. This is what some of the Mefarshim, such as the Beis Yosef, explain for why we celebrate 8 days, even though in truth the miracle seemingly only occurred for 7 days, as they did have enough oil for 1 day. So there weren't 8 days worth of it. So there's many answers, as we know. But one of those answers is very simply, the first day we're celebrating the victory of the war. Don't forget about that. Don't forget about the main aspect of celebration. Nonetheless, there is also the aspect of celebrating the miracle of the oil. And that's why, as we know, it's an 8-day holiday, and not a 1-day holiday like Purim, as we're celebrating the fact that the oil lasted for another 7 days, for a total of 8 days worth of celebration. Now, we asked earlier, what is the reason that we make such a big deal about this miracle when so many miracles happen in the temple? No one even bothered picking them up. And now suddenly we make an annual celebration of 8 days. So, first of all, it's interesting that we do not find in most of the classical sources any mention of the miracle of oil. It's not written in the Yerushalmi, which is the Talmud that was written in Eretz Yisrael, where this happened. No mention is made there of this miracle. It's not written in the Midrashim. It's not written in most of the original manuscripts of Megillas Antiochus. No mention is made. It's not mentioned in Mahavdil, the Goyish sources, the secular sources, Sefer HaMaccabim, Josephus, nothing. Our only source for the miracle of the oil is the Babylonian Talmud, the Talmud Bavli. Now, of course, that's a source. That's a very strong source, and of course, we know that's true. However, the point we're emphasizing is that the main miracle of Chanukah that we're looking at is, again, the idea of the victory of the Jewish people, the victory of the Torah, and the victory of the Kedusha, of the holiness that was left intact. Now, this correlates directly with the oil, as the whole idea of oil is that it floats above water. It always remains separate. It's the essence of every single item. And that's coming to emphasize the idea of Chanukah is not just as people can secularize the holiday and turn it into an independence victory. This was not an independence victory. If the Hellenists would have won, it would have been an independence victory, to be independent from God and religion. This is a dependent victory, that we made ourselves, we gave up our lives for the sake of God, and our essence of our souls remained untouched and unadulterated, contaminated, that we're able to hand over our souls for God's Torah. And this is the whole idea of the oil, and that's why there's many questions that are asked regarding the miracle itself. What was the need for the miracle? According to Halacha, it's permitted if the people are impure to light with impure oil. You can light with impure oil. There's no problem. So what was the whole big deal that they found pure oil and lit when they could have even lit it with impure oil according to Halacha? The answer is that the pure oil emphasized the idea of the inner dimensions of the soul corresponding to the inner dimensions of the Torah, corresponding to the inner connection of the Jewish people with God. And that's what became victorious here, so that's why we celebrate so much the oil. Okay, that's our introduction. We're going to get started now with our checklist of directives, halachos, minhagim, and reminders. There is a dispute amongst the Rishonim and the Poskim as to whether the essence of the celebration of Chanukah is simply and merely accomplished through lighting candles, or also, in addition to that, through having physical celebratory meals. Some say it's a completely spiritual holiday. This was a spiritual battle. This was not like the times of Haman where he wanted to eradicate the entire ethnic group of the Jewish people, irrelevant of their religious affiliation. This was a religious war. They didn't care if Jews lived as long as they Hellenized. They didn't care if Jews lived as long as they didn't connect God to the Torah they were learning. This was a spiritual battle, so they say that therefore the institutions of how this to be celebrated was also only spiritual. So you only have to light candles, that's how it's done. It's not like Purim where you have to have a meal and get drunk, etc. Other Rishonim say that you're right regarding that there's a difference in Chanukah and Purim, and that Purim was a war where our bodies were saved, while Chanukah is a war where our souls were saved. Nonetheless, the third aspect, and this goes back to what we said earlier, there's a third reason behind the Chanukah celebration, in addition to the first two. Again, the first one was winning the war, the second is the miracle of the oil, and this is now the third one. The third one is Chanukah Sabayis. We rededicated the temple, the altar. When the Chashmonaim came in, they saw complete destruction and defilement of everything that's holy inside. Everything had to be refurnished, remade. In fact, the menorah had to be redone. He built himself a wood menorah for that lighting. You know why? Because if they would have used a metal menorah, the metal is tameh, it would have been purified and defiled the oil. So what did we do? So they had to use wood, which does not receive impurity in this situation. So, because we know that in the times of Shlomo Melech when the Beis HaMikdash was first built, it was inaugurated on Yom Kippur, and it was such a great simcha that they didn't even fast on Yom Kippur. So we see that the day of the inauguration of the temple, the day that we inaugurate God's home down here, is a celebratory event, and that celebration is with food, just like Shlomo HaMelech had people eat on Yom Kippur. Except for a few firm people, like Shlomo, come on. Everyone ate. Can you believe that? The whole Jewish people had meals on Yom Kippur. Probably got some slack for that. In any event, so these Rishonim say that same idea of Chanukah. You're right that Chanukah, the miracle, Chashmonaim, the oil, that's all spiritual. But don't forget, there was an inauguration, a rededication of God's temple. For that, we must physically celebrate with food and drink and rejoice. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, we rule to be stringent like this opinion, which means the Ramah concludes that every day of Chanukah we should rejoice, we should have festive meals, but in order to make it a Sudas Mitzvah according to everyone, and not just be a feeding of the stomach, according to the first opinion, there's no need for all this. This is irrelevant, right? So therefore we should sing songs that arouse us in Avedis Hashem, and we should say over the Torah. That's what turns it into a Sudas Mitzvah. On Shabbos, even if you don't say Divrei Torah, there's a mitzvah of Einik Shabbos in and of itself. You say Divrei Torah afterwards, you say you go to shir after you eat. But on Chanukah, in order to turn into Sudas mitzvah according to everybody, there needs to be some spiritual orientation involved in the meal itself.
Just eating latkes around the candles doesn't qualify, or does it?
So some poskim try to infer from other poskim. Bottom line, some poskim lean to say that you should wash on bread and have meat, like real meals. This is not the accepted approach, and you don't have to literally have bread and meat, but something, a celebratory menu. That's the real idea.
But you can't buy latkes in Tzfat.
Why?
Where?
Oh, I don't know.
You go to Yoram's and you get the pre-latke. You do it.
The pre-latke and potatoes?
And then
That's what I'm going to have to do. No, it's funny. You can buy sufganiyot everywhere, but they discriminate against us Ashkenazim. I'll be making. Yeah, I'll be making.
Making stuff.
You can't get menus.
You can make. Okay, let's continue.
Anyway.
We'll get to the sufganiyot soon. We'll get to oil food soon. On Shabbos Chanukah, this coming up Shabbos, the end of the week, we're supposed to increase even more than usual. We should have an extra celebratory menu for our Shabbos meal than we do normally in order to emphasize Chanukah. Now it happens to be this year's also Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh. So on Rosh Chodesh also, anytime during the year when Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, the poskim write, so there's the Magen Avraham, you're supposed to add an extra food towards these, so we have to have a super Shabbos meal this coming Shabbos.
So this Shabbos is the anniversary of my bar mitzvah.
Wow.
So at the Artist Quarter, Minyan will be sponsoring Kiddush. So you're all invited at 12:30.
Artist what?
The Artist Quarter.
Sufganiyot for everybody.
Chabad Minyan, what do you?
You're cool.
Oh, that's the, okay, I know.
The breakaway.
At
whatever
Dan
you
Brock's. It's not a breakaway.
That's where you down?
Yeah.
Or the breakaway.
Okay, very nice.
Christian. Just totally joking.
Next. This is, of course, to remind the wives. They're usually in charge of the kitchen, so this is to remind. We'll mention this in the women's share, but nonetheless, everyone can remind their wives about this. On Rosh Chodesh Tevis, which is also Sunday, we do an increase, same idea, because on Rosh Chodesh, anyways, there's a mitzvah to increase in food. The menu. So, as we know, there's a minhag to eat dairy foods, cheese on Chanukah. This is recorded in the Ramah, in the Shulchan Aruch, chapter 670. And the reason behind this custom is to commemorate, there's a few reasons. One of the reasons to commemorate the story that occurred with Yehudis, how she had the general killed, right? The general of Jerusalem. There's also other reasons mentioned behind this minhag of eating cheese. Let's see what else recorded here. Actually, did not record other reasons. Yeah, that's the only reason I recorded. Okay. Now it's funny because for some reason the cheese eating minhag has become kind of obsolete, while that has been taken over by the minhag of eating things cooked in oil. Ironically, eating things cooked in oil is not mentioned in any of the poskim. No one mentions this. The Ramah doesn't mention it. But we do find one old source that mentions it, a non-classical source that mentions it. Nonetheless, minhag is very clear. It is a customary to eat foods with oil, and originally this was with olive oil, by the way, to emphasize the oil, the olive oil, but today they use the cheapest oils possible, and, etc. And the father of the Rambam, Maimonides, he was asked, Rabbi Maimon, he was asked this question by an individual. We have the letter that he wrote back. He was asked, do I really need to eat sufganiyot? That's how actually the wording there is in the letter, sufganiyot, on Chanukah. And he wrote, well, of course, there's no obligation. The sages never instituted thou shalt eat one sufganiyot per meal on Chanukah. But nonetheless, this is a minhag Yisrael, and every custom of the Jewish people should be, honored and respected. And the reason for it is that this cherishes the miracle of the oil. So this is basically a custom that the Jewish people took upon themselves as the generations went by. We already see mention of it in the times of the Rambam's father. So this is a very old custom. It's not something new that the bakeries invented today for making money. It's something that the bakeries invented a long time ago for making money. This is already a Yerusha. We see also that the Alter Rebbe would have a latke event, a Chanukah party for his family, wearing latkes. So here we have mention of eating latkes brought down. Regarding Sufganiyot, we'll mention a few halachos related. I can bring it here. I'll have to add it to the new edition. Sufganiyot are usually deep fried, which in terms of the bracha will make them be eternally mezainis. They can never become hamaitzi, even if you eat 1,000 of them in one day, in one setting. It still will not become hamaitzi. Unlike baked products, which can become hamaitzi after you eat a certain amount. So that we're off the hook with Sufganiyot in terms of getting into a Kriya Suda problem. Now, Sufganiyot have some, unlike what many people may think, Sufganiyot have some major kashrus concerns, and therefore they should only be purchased from a reliable hashgacha who cares about kashrus, knows what they're doing, and really makes sure to negate the issues I'm about to mention. The following issues are found in the kashrus of Sufganiyot. Number one, the issue of the flour. Has it been sifted? Now, we've discussed in the shir before that Minhagei today you don't really have to sift flour because we don't really have today infestations to the extent of the halacha would require, even in Eretz Yisrael. Nonetheless, this is the accepted custom in Eretz HaKodesh that we do sift the flour, and if you're with somebody who doesn't care about the laws of kashrus, if there's not a proper hashgacha, then they may even take an infested flour bag and put it in. They don't care. They're making money. If they have a little more protein in their sufganiyot, no one's going to complain because they don't know what's inside. So that's one reason. Another reason is because it happens to be that in the sufganiyot there's many different ingredients that may be added. Sometimes you have added in the sufganiyot alcohol. And the reason why alcohol is added is for the purpose of making the dough not become saturated with oil. If you ever notice, some sufganiyot are super saturated, you can squeeze oil out of them, and some of them are not saturated at all. You open them up, you almost feel nothing inside. One of the things that helps accomplish that is alcohol. The alcohol pushes away. Now, alcohol, as we know, can have a kosher source, and can have a non-kosher source called yayin nesach. And therefore, that's another issue that needs hashgacha. Another issue that needs hashgacha is the riba, is the jam that they put inside. A jam that does not have the proper hashgacha can be made using glycerine made from non-kosher animal fats. Another issue is regarding bishul akum. If a guy, everyone agrees that bishul akum, things cooked by a guy, are forbidden. Baked is a different story, but cooked is forbidden. This is cooked, we already said it's deep fried, it always remains in the zaynis and alamechya, and therefore clearly it is usher to eat if a guy is the one who cooks it, and therefore it has to be a Jew that either turned on the flame for Ashkenazim and for Sephardim that actually put in the sufganiyot inside, or turn on the flame after it was put in. Okay, so these are all the issues. Therefore, sufganiyot should only be purchased and eaten with a proper hashgacha. And if someone bought them, he said, "Where did you get them?" "Oh, I got them at the shuk." "What's the shuk?" "I don't know, but I saw a lot of people buying." A person should be wary to find out what is the source of this, because a lot of people don't know. They don't think what issues can there be with sufganiyot. Okay. Chanukah got. A Jewish custom in Chanukah is to distribute Chanukah coins to family members. We don't have a source for this custom. The closest source we have is the idea that's recorded that one should increase in giving charity on Chanukah throughout the days of Chanukah. Giving tzedakah is brought down on Chanukah is brought down in Kitzur Shulchan and other places. And in Sifrei Kabbalah is brought down that it has a special tikkun for different sins. We have a special time during Chanukah to be metakan, to fix different iniquities. That is what we can say is the root of the idea of distributing Chanukah Gel to one's children. This custom the Rebbe took and made a very big deal about, and following were some of the instructions that the Rebbe gave. First, that parents should give Chanukah Gel every single day of Chanukah to their children, except for Shabbos, of course. The Rebbe emphasized that on Shabbos you shouldn't even give the equivalent of Chanukah Gel, because Chanukah is usually money, and you don't want to even have an inkling of a resemblance to muktzah, to giving money. So, except for Shabbos, but nonetheless, as the Rebbe said, that should be made up.
Chocolate guilt? Chocolate guilt?
Not in place. They can get chocolate guilt because they're getting chocolate guilt, but not in place of Chanukah guilt. The Chanukah guilt has to be a double portion either on Friday or Sunday. Okay, this is new for this generation, but we know that the Rebbe Rayatz himself only gave, and including the previous Rebbe, only gave Chanukah to their children on the 4th or 5th night of Chanukah, and not any other night. But we have a special connection, we have a special directive that we should give every single night. And that includes to adult children. Meaning, even if the father is 119 years old, 353 days, and has a son that's 102 years old, he still has to call him up and give him Chanukah Gel.
You do a bank
Every day
transfer for your out-of-town kids?
Yeah, of course.
You do a
Why
bank
not?
transfer?
I don't think they'll complain.
The other, Chanukah Gel.
But then you have to distribute it to 8 portions.
To what?
8 portions.
Oh, okay.
You can give them instructions just to divide it into 8 portions.
No, every bank transfer every day.
As well, in addition to giving every night, the 4th or 5th night, we give a double portion. So we're really giving, whatever you plan on giving every night, it's really giving that 9 times worth, not 8 times worth.
Try to contact my 86-year-old mother to give away father and mother.
Well, if she'll want to, follow this and give you some Chanukah Gel. It's from parents to children, not children to parents. The Rebbe also said that spouses should ask each other for Chanukah Gel, and I'm assuming that means that they should give as well, not just ask, but they should give. And Rebbes should give their Talmidim. The Rebbe was accustomed to give Chanukah Gel in earlier years, not in the later years, it was already too much. But in the earlier years, the Rebbe was accustomed to distribute Chanukah Gel to the Tmimim, to the Yeshiva Bachrim, and he would say that it doesn't matter how much is being given, it's not the amount that counts, but it's brought down that one who receives a coin from Iya becomes blessed, when he receives a coin from the Rebbe becomes blessed. And this coin, which we're distributing with the power of the Rebbe Rayatz, the Nasi Adar, so a person who has this by him becomes blessed. And this is really the whole idea of dollars, by the way. The whole idea of dollars, on the one hand, we know is to distribute to tzedakah. On the other hand, is that the Rebbe was giving the people something that that should become for them a source of blessing. And that's why we don't just go ahead and put the dollar in the tzedakah, or even worse, spend it on something. The Rebbe gave me free money, buy a lollipop or something. So this is something that we hold dear to us, is from this item of the tzaddik, a blessing comes. Okay, we're going to get moving with the Chanukah prayers. I'll just mention that plain dreidel is a Jewish custom, as we know, not recorded in Shulchan Aruch, but is a tradition brought down and recorded in other Chassidish Sfarim. And however, it is forbidden to play with money in the sense of gambling. Gambling is forbidden any time throughout the year, so we can't gamble with dreidel either. It was customary, for whatever reason, to play cards on Chanukah, and the Gdolei Poskim Kabbalah spoke out against this, that it should not be done. In addition to the fact that many of the Poskim record that Chanukah is a time that one has to increase in Torah learning. And how ironic is it, and they say this is already from Bal Yerabah 400 years ago, how what we see today, that people close their Gemaras and they play cards in the evening of Chanukah, even Yeshiva Bachim, is completely against halach and against the spirit of Chanukah. What was Chanukah all about? That the Torah won, right? That the spirituality won, and now you're closing and you're doing what the Yevanim wanted. It doesn't make sense. So that's what they say. Chanukah is a time of increasing in Torah learning, not to mention God forbid.
Maybe it has to do with a full house.
Not what?
It's a card joke.
Oh, full house, right, okay. Yes. Okay, Hanukkah prayers. So there's not too much to mention.
Number 36 candles against 36 cards, just a little spiritual meaning as well.
36 cards, okay, I didn't notice 36 cards.
You said you pointed out original card with 36 cards.
Yeah, I wrote that down.
Yeah.
I don't even remember, you see. Let's see.
Another reason why not to play cards. 36 candles represent
36 candles, I know I didn't get. I didn't see, let's see. Here I didn't like that. I didn't write anything about 36. Okay, anyways.
Maybe put
Chanukah prayers. So as we know, starting today for Mincha, there's no more Tachanun until the last day of Chanukah. An Aval who was a Chiyuv, who's davening for the Yamud, continues davening for them on Chanukah, with exception to Rish Chodesh, which is next Sunday, where they do not, just like in any Rish Chodesh. And on Chanukah itself, they daven until Hallel. Hallel, someone switches back, someone takes them over, and then after Hallel, they once again go back for the half Kaddish, etc. Al Hanisim we recite for all 8 days if a person forgot to say it. So we have a few stops. Stop number 1. If you didn't yet say Baruch Hashem of the last blessing, like Kel Hoides, then you can still go back. You are to go back and say it. If, let's say in benching, you didn't finish yet saying Allah Tzvalamazim, you didn't say Baruch Hashem, then you go back and say it even though you've already read a whole paragraph. However, once that has been recited, then you can no longer go back, and what the place can record, the Ramah, the Alter brings in the Siddur, is that it should be said, and in the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, that it should be said over here prior to the Ratzin. You just say, in the Russian of Harachama. I think they have it over here written. Yeah. Yeah, you say Val Anisim, Al Purk, Mal Gvurus. And in benching, you say it in the way of Rachman. You say it prior to a Rachman who is a Kedem Nesa Mashiach. And if you look in these Siddurim, they have it. I think they have it written over here. Yeah, they do.
Citing the normal order, or is it?
Rachman, you see. You make it up here.
Oh, you make it up and forget.
If you forget, you make it up here, and you read the whole thing. You say Rachman, Yes, and you read the whole thing. But over here, before you learn, you would say the Al Hanisim. We do not announce Al Hanisim prior to Shemona Esrei. That is certainly not before Shachris, and also not before Ma'ariv, before Mincha and Adin. It's mutter, but it's enough just to bang the table. Everyone understands, but we don't announce it due to the issue of making an interval. Another custom brought down is that the Chazan should recite Ya'alav Ya'aleh out loud when he reaches the words, and that will, remind everybody, all the people that are still behind him. Throughout the 8 days of Chanukah, we say the complete Hallel with a bracha. This is for Sfardim and Ashkenazim. There's no machlekes here. Everyone agrees. We're all in the same boat. And we, unlike on Rosh Chodesh, after Hallel, we say half Kaddish. We only say Kaddish and whole Kaddish after Hallel when there's Musaf. As then, we are saying half Kaddish after Volitzim before Musaf. But now that there's no Musaf except on Rosh Chodesh Chanukah, therefore we say only the half Kaddish. I already said the Aval, if he's a Chiyuv, he takes over for that half Kaddish. We have Kriyas Oteh every single day. We read from the portion of the Nasiim and Parshas Nasai that is similarly read by us in the month of Nisan.
Oh, okay, as long as you're on this subject, this is always confusing. I'm right on target. In Al Hanisim, it says, in the days of Matisyahu, the son of Yochanan, the high priest, the Hasmonean and his sons. Okay, so is the Hasmonean and his sons referring to Yochanan the high priest, or Matisyahu? Or is it just like one and the same as that? The grandchildren of one and the other?
His sons is going on Hashmonai.
No, who's Hashmonai going on?
That's Yochanan. He was called Hashmonai.
Okay. Matisyahu was also Matisyahu was his son.
It's going on the sons of Yochanan.
Sons of Yochanan, which are not the famous ones.
They mention in Yochanan. So it's like this. There were Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol was the Kohen Gadol at the time.
Matisyahu was.
Okay. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was Kohen Gadol at the time. He's the one. We have the whole story that he killed Nikarin. That's brought down in Megillah Santiaches. And his son was Matisyahu. And his sons are the 5 famous sons.
Yehuda.
So this is going on all three generations. Yochanan Kohen Gadol, Matisyahu, and the 5 sons.
They're all Hasmonayans.
Yeah, we can give it to all of them.
Okay. But the initial revolt, when he got them of the
Was with his father. No, right, but that was not the initial. The initial was
Then it goes
Yochanan.
further after them. They had
Yochanan
a dynasty
Kohen
that
Gadol was the
lasts.
first one.
Who was Eliezer?
also? He was there.
That was Yochanan's grandson.
No. The older Eliezer that was.
Oh, the story, right, that, I haven't found the source for that story. I brought the story down here, but I didn't bring down the source. We don't know who he was or when he was around. They say he was around by the Chanukah miracle.
But not a relative necessarily.
That was not the Eliezer of the sons of.
For sure not. That's not a
I have no
No
idea.
idea.
I haven't found the source for the story at all.
No, Yehuda is sort of like the leader who succeeded his father, Matisyahu, was sort of the lead Maccabee, whatever. But the other 4 brothers, Shimon or whatever, they were all part of the Maccabee squad. The brothers are all.
But it sounds like it's like this. From the Gil's Hantiach sense that this is the lineage. Matisyahu Kohen Gadol had a son Yochanan, who became Kohen Gadol.
Had a son.
Listen till the end.
Okay.
Matisyahu Kohen Gadol had a son Yochanan, became Kohen Gadol. This Yochanan went ahead and assassinated Nicanor. Okay? Now this Yochanan had a son called Matisyahu, who had 5 sons.
So there was a Matisyahu, a Yochanan, and a Matisyahu.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people name kids after their grandparents all
Okay.
the time. If they're started even when they're still alive.
Okay.
So it's not like strange that we have the same names going down.
Okay. Okay. And the Maccabees were all involved. The Maccabees are larger than just the 5 sons, right? They're
The Maccabees were first named after the sons. Let's see, maybe it was with Yochanan. Look in my introduction. Look in my story.
And then
The translation.
there's one more thing. Hellenic government refers to the Greek government, or
Not necessarily.
So
Jews that were Hellenists.
So wicked Hellenic government is referring in the davening to.
All the Hellenists, whoever were Hellenists.
So it was the Greeks that viciously killed and challenged nothing. I mean, there were Jews who went with them, but what does Hellenic government mean? That's not the Greek government. That's Jewish.
There were puppets. There were Jewish puppets that were, that were in charge of them. Read the story.
The wicked Hellenic government.
I'm going to teach you guys the halachas. The story you
Okay,
can read.
fine.
You can even read part of most of the story in the bathroom. You can open up the book of Josephus. You can open up the book of the Maccabees.
Yeah,
It's nice. It's a nice novel.
You're confused by this Hellenic government.
We also have a good radio
Greeks-
drama done
The
by
Greeks were the instigators. The Jews just went along with them.
Gottlieb
What's
and
the Hellenic
Crown.
government mean?
Chanukah.org.
Okay.
Story of the Maccabees.
Okay, let's get straight into the Minhagei lighting. Okay, this is what we're here for. So we're going through just a checklist of bottom line practical halacha that we need to know. A lot more details here. You can all see in your copy of the book or online on the website. And let's begin. So the choicest oils and wicks that should be purchased are, as we know, olive oil. Even though all oil is kosher for lighting the menorah, even soy oil and canola oil and any oil you want is kosher. It's not like Shabbos candles that we have a whole list of Baba Madlikim. Right? You say Baba Madlikim, right? Ashkenazim say Baba Madlikim, and Sfardim in between every Friday night. So you read a whole list of oils that are not kosher. Chanukah, all oils are kosher for a simple reason. On Shabbos, you need to have good quality oil because it's there for a purpose of seeing. Chanukah candles are not there for the purpose of seeing, but just for the sake of them being lit. You're in fact not even allowed to make use of them, so we don't care what kind of oil is used so long as it lights. Nonetheless, the choicest mitzvah namufchar is olive oil. Now, amongst olive oil, we know that there is many types of olive oil on the market. In essence, we're going to divide it into 3 types. Type A is forgery, not olive oil at all. It's sold as olive oil. It says olive oil. It has even a nice picture of some olives on it with a company name, and it's even more expensive than regular oil, but obviously cheaper than regular olive oil. That is most likely fake oil. It is not olive oil at all. It's something else that just had some additives. Olive oil is the most forged market. Last year when I looked this up in the world, it is full of forgeries. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a governmental as a governmental agency that is in charge of, of regulating olive oil and its sale, or we have private organizations that give their personal stamps of approval. You have that in Israel, you have it in the United States, you have many places in the world. Italy, one of the centers of olive oil, has at one point had 80% forgery. And it's very simple. Olive oil costs more money. Cheaper oil costs less money. If you sell fake olive oil for a few bucks more than cheaper oil, but a few bucks less than olive oil, you still make a lot of money. So someone thinks they're getting a good deal. In truth, who's getting the good deal? People selling it. Because you just pay very expensive for canola oil or soy oil.
If you bought olive oil under Ada Hashgacha that says pure olive oil, is it a problem?
So, as far as I looked into this in the past, the Eda Cheredis and Rav Landau only give a hashgacha to olive oil that contains the certification of this organization here in Eretz Yisrael that has quality control. They make sure it's pure olive oil. So if it has that, what's called taf ketim, it's a team, something like that, it should be on the bottle. You can trust it. Other hashgachas, unfortunately, that's not the philosophy. They just care about kosher. They're not here to make sure that what you're getting is what you're paying for.
That includes the little kits that have pre-made oil?
If it's under the Cheredis, most likely it's reliable. But if it's under, bottom line is that when you're buying olive oil, if you want to do the mitzvah namucha, you should make sure it's real olive oil. If it's being sold for very cheap, most likely it's very expensive soy oil and it's not cheap olive oil. That's number one. But nonetheless, are you Yetzer b'diavad? Yes, you're Yetzer b'diavad. Of course you are. All oils are kosher, but it's not the mitzvah namucha, it's olive oil. Number two, even if it has, for certain it's olive oil, it's been authorized, you have the agent stamp. Nonetheless, then you have two different levels. You have one which is called shemen lamar, which is basically the leftovers of the leftovers of the leftovers of the crushed olive. It's oil that cannot be marketed for eating. Its level of acid is like over 5%, over 4%. It's extremely high.
Over 8%.
Some of them. And basically it's not edible. Now, also the way this olive oil is extracted, it's not like just extracted with crushing the olive. That olive oil is being sold. This is extracted through using different chemicals, using sulfur, and because of this, the poskim have dealt with this question: what is the status of this olive oil? Is it regular olive oil, what's sold as shemen lamar, or is it not? Or does it have a lesser status than regular olive oil, and it's not the fulfillment of the mitzvah Minhagei and Minhagei? And many poskim have pointed out for different reasons that it does not satisfy the Minhagei and Minhagei of the level of olive oil that we want. A, it's not fit for eating. B, it's been extracted through new technologies and chemicals, which has totally changed the essence of what the olive oil was, and therefore it's similar to canola oil or any other oil on the market. It's not halachically considered olive oil anymore. So this is a debate, and therefore one thing's for certain: there is no hiddur to buy the oil that says on it shemen lamar for Chanukah. That oil is cheaper than the real olive oil, usually half the price at least, and it's not. I've gotten questions. Oh, can I just use? I didn't have time to buy the shemen lamar olive oil. Can I use the olive oil I have in my cabinet? The answer is on the contrary. That olive oil is the best according to everybody. The shemen, yes, the real olive oil, the real 30, 40 shekel bottle that you purchase with the Tav Tekin that it has the certification. That's what the chatchila should be used. Then you fulfill the mitzvah namucha according to everybody. That's what everybody should be encouraged to do for themselves, to light with that oil every single night, not to use the shemen lamar. Shemen lamar is, as I said, many places can say it's considered, and the reasons are very acceptable, that it's considered similar to the other lower levels oils. It's not olive oil. Okay, regarding wicks, so all wicks are kosher, but nonetheless the mitzvah namucha, the chatchila, is to use wicks made of cotton, pure cotton wicks, and this would mean that it's better not to use wicks that have a little bit of wax placed around them. Those float candles, the float wicks, they basically place wax around those wicks. I don't even know if they're made of cotton or made of something else. It's a different story. So therefore, the best of the best is to just use pure, simple, regular cotton wicks. But nonetheless, it's all kosher. Whatever you use, it's
It's
kosher.
okay also if they're it's mutter if they're also braided.
All wicks are braided. How do you make a wick without it being braided?
I use cotton, but that's another story.
How is it not braided? The cotton itself is woven. It's cotton ball?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not straight up from the plant. It doesn't show up on the plant that way.
I know, but
It's in essence been braided. It's been braided. The cotton ball has been braided. It's not a single string. You would never be able to make a wick out of a single string of wool or cotton. So that's it. So I think you answered the question. So, it's just not physically possible. It's like tzitzis. All tzitzis has to be braided. If a tzitzis wasn't braided, it wouldn't be kosher. Ours are 8 braids, but you can even have 2 braids, but it has to be braided. It also wouldn't last. You would have to change your tzitzis every day. Okay, for the shamash, the custom is to use a wax candle. You don't have to. You can also use an oil candle. Many people do. But the custom based on Kabbalah, and so is the Chabad Kasi specifically, a beeswax candle for the shamash.
This is a confusing matter every year, because we have your Chanukah, and you take your nice long Chabad approved shamash, and you say the bracha and you light bum, bum, bum. Okay, you have in the middle of the menorah, not a space for a little thin candle that's very long that we call a shamash, but we put another one of the, whatever we use, the bulbs, the prefab bulbs or whatever, and we put that in the part, that 9th hole. And so how do you coordinate that? Is that then the shamash? Can you light that?
What is you saying? You have a menorah that has a 9th hole for an oil candle.
Exactly.
So that's what I said before. That minadin you could make the shamash. The idea of the shamash is that it be a light that you can benefit. The shamash has 2 purposes. One of them is just to be a light that you can benefit from. If you want to benefit from the menorah, you can't benefit from the Chanukah candles, but you can benefit from the shamash. So you have a shamash there that's available to benefit from. So you're able to use it if you need to see. Today we have electricity. The shamash really doesn't serve that purpose anymore, unless you have a blackout. However, a shamash will serve another purpose, which is to help light the other candles. Ashkenazim say that the shamash is to light the other candles. Sfardim don't. So most Sfardim will light another oil candle, like what you're describing in your menorah, and that's also the shamash. But by Ashkenazim, it's one and the same candle. So we use a wax candle, because how you can use an oil candle? How you can light it? You use a wax candle, you light all the other ones, and you put it down.
Okay, now that's a problem, because that middle place
A little bit of
most menorahs is a big thing. Can't I light just one of the extra bulbs that with the shamash I can light them, and that's called the shamash now?
You could, but just take the shamash that you already have and put it there.
But it's thin and it falls over. It's long and it's thin. And
So use tinfoil. Use tinfoil.
Use that instead.
Put tinfoil inside. But listen, if you're not able to, yes, you could light something else, but it should always be higher or lower. It shouldn't be on the same level as the menorah. It should always have to be. Is it higher or lower?
Probably.
It has to be higher or lower. It shouldn't matter. But you see also, they have different rabbis. They make for them special shamashim. You ever see? There's a huge shamash, and they cost like 100 shekel each. Huge, tall shamash, 6 feet tall. They use them to light with.
Right, so when you use the one in the way you're saying I could do if I really wanted to, by lighting a final bulb, then
Many people do, as long as it's higher or lower. But nonetheless, our minhag is that this is the shamash.
At that point, I would be taking the long one and putting it out. It would go out, but I light it
Correct.
out. Okay.
The shamash doesn't have kedusha. Okay. Each candle is to contain enough oil to last at least 30 minutes after nightfall. So, if you're lighting, whatever time you're lighting after nightfall, whatever time you're lighting, it has to last at least 30 minutes. It's not a lot of olive oil. Many are accustomed to actually place water under the olive oil. It's brought down, I believe, the Sefer Chaim Philology, that when you do it that way, it's symbolic of the Greeks are the water, the Jewish people are the oil, and the Jewish people float over the water, over the Greeks. And nonetheless, minimally, there has to be enough for a half hour. You have some that are stringent and say that today, that many people are outside till much later than in previous times. The amount of time that the candles must be lit for has now extended. So if back then people went to sleep already in beds, cozying up under their blankets a half hour after nightfall, Today, people are only doing that maybe a half hour after midnight. So they say you have to have the candles lit until people are no longer around outside. Practically, we do not follow this approach. First, number one, once the Chachamim made their decree, that's what it is. It can't be renovated anymore. Number two, today we mainly light inside the house, and inside the house, it's not anyways going to be seen by people on the outside, so what difference does it make what time they go to sleep, what time people are out. So half hour is the minimum, that's the halacha. Now, if you're lighting right after Shkia, as is Minhagei Chabad and as many other Yidden do, then you are to put enough oil for it to last a half hour after sunset. So here in Eretz Yisrael, that sunset is about 20 minutes before Tzesek Echav and nightfall during Chanukah time. We put about 50 minutes worth of oil.
Okay, so ideally right before Shkia, which would be 4:30-ish today, roughly, right?
Right after Shkia, that's when we light, yeah. We put in at least 50 minutes worth of oil. Now in Chutz La'aretz, technically if you're lighting, let's say in New York, there's about 40 to 50 minutes between Shkia and nightfall. About 38 minutes to be quite exact during this time of year. So in that situation, you would put, enough oil to last half hour after nightfall whenever you light it after Shkia. The Rebbe was particular to light it about 20 minutes before nightfall, so therefore it would still be the same 50 minutes.
The law of our Minhagei is how many minutes after nightfall it should still be burning? How many minutes after nightfall?
That's not our minhag, that's a half hour after.
Half hour after nightfall. I thought, but if we light it right after Shkia, that won't be enough time. That won't be enough.
So we're going to get to the timing soon. I just want to mention that enough time. Bottom line is 30 minutes after nightfall minimum. How do we set up the candles? So we know that our minhag is that we set it up starting from the far right. It used to be people would set it up from the far left. There were many different customs. In my book, I have a footnote, a huge fat footnote like this big, explaining all the different approaches and opinions and customs and reasons of how this is done. And basically, you practically have an opinion and custom for every physical direction available of how to light the Chanukah candles. But our minhag is that we start from the right and we add one more on every night, from left to right. So that's how we set it up. And we're lighting from the left to the right, not from the right to the left. The shamash is before it has to be placed slightly higher than the other candles. It has to be shown that it's different than the rest of the candles.
We're lighting from it. We put the candles in.
This is my menorah. Set it up from here. Right side.
Okay, and then the second night you put one inside there, and then if you light, which way?
You set up from right to left, from right to left, and you light from left to right.
So the new candle you light first each night. The new candle for each night you light.
It's like you set it up as in Hebrew and you light as if in English.
Lighting the new candle for each night. The new setup.
Okay, where do we set up the menorah? The menorah is to be set up. We already, I think I touched upon this earlier. We have from the ruling of the Talmud, it's supposed to be set up towards the outside, for the outside people to see. Persuma Nisa, the place has the miracle. Practically today, in most areas, based on the Rishonim and Paiskim Ramon Shulchan Aruch, we all light inside of our home. And so now the question is, where inside of the home should we light? And the answer is that while some people light by the window, this is based on the Magen Avraham and Mishnah Brura, the Ramah rules, and this is the Chabad custom, is to light specifically within the doorway. The Magen Avraham says, light by the window, so you have A, you're following the custom of lighting inside your house, and B, you're also following the custom, the halacha of publicizing the miracle. However, that by doing so, you're losing the advantage of being surrounded by mitzvahs of having the Chanukah on the left side and the zuzah on the right side, and walking through the two mitzvahs. So this is the debate, and practically there are rules, and this is how we follow, that we always light it across from the mezuzah in one of the doors of your house.
So I light on the door to the mirpesed in the front, so that somebody on the outside can see, but we.
How can they see? There's
a driveway in the shchuna.
Okay, so listen, you get the advantage of both aspects. It's also a window, it's also on the floor, it's also opposite.
Glass, yes, glass door.
You open it up and get the wind could blow the candles out there, no?
So we leave it closed. Leave it closed, right inside. Yeah.
Most of my neighbors are Sephardim though, and they put it outside.
A Sephardi custom is also to light inside. Only here it's okay should they start lighting outside. But the Sephardi custom is always like the Ashkenazim to light inside. It's only here in Eretz Kodesh that things began changing recently. But everyone used to light inside. That was the minhag. And that remains the minhag. Somebody who lives in an apartment, they certainly, according to Allah, light inside. They light inside their home. And in such cases, it could be even when they can't light by the window. If their window is 20 amos above ground, then they can no longer light by the window. They have to light by the inner doorway. Okay? Because then it's no longer considered a publication of a miracle if it's 20 amos above the ground.
You were about to say that when we do it our custom way with the mezuzah on one side and the other, and then on the other, we should do it on the inside door, not the door to the outside, because they can blow out, right? We get this.
You can do it by your front door, just leave the door closed. Don't do it by your front door.
Right. Inside.
The main thing is to do it near where people will be around, not just, do it near where people will be around. The menorah is to be set up between 3 to 10 tefach from the ground. That's the chatchila. So again, between 24 and 80 centimeters. That means that the flame, the menorah itself and the flame should not be higher than 80 centimeters from the ground. It's about up to here. It shouldn't be higher than this, and it shouldn't be lower than 24 centimeters. That refers to the menorah itself. So there should always be a stool or something under the menorah to help lift it up. Even if you have a menorah, let's say you have a menorah that the menorah itself is a few feet tall, then while that's good for public lighting, for shul lightings, for home lighting, that is preferable not to use that because the flame will be above 80 centimeters. When you have many people lighting at home, such as is the custom of Ashkenazi Jewry, that everyone in the family, all the males of the family, light candles. So the Rama writes that everyone should pick a different spot to light. We shouldn't all light in the same spot because we want it to be recognizable to all what night of Chanukah it is. If a few people live in the same spot, so a guest who comes is unfilled. Oh, really? Tonight's the fourth night of Chanukah? I didn't know. Tomorrow he'll go home. He was so inspired by Yehuda's home. He's now going to light 5 candles on the second night.
He blurs the whole vision. He blurs his vision and sees too many candles and he can't figure it out.
Yeah.
We can
So
tell
therefore,
him. We tell him this is the first night.
well, we tell you, have your family light in different areas.
That's not so easy to find. A menorah, mezuzah on one side and the other, and very many areas.
Okay, so well, depends how many kids you have. So, Eretz Shem, everyone who has many boys, they should have enough rooms with mezuzahs that they.
You like go around like the bedrooms and stuff and do this?
Yeah. Okay. If you need to, you can also put different heights. It should be separate. It should be recognizably separate.
Menorahs themselves could be different heights to do that job.
Yeah.
And the women
Ideally, should be different.
The women might even do that already.
So women are obligated just like men, but in a household, you only need to have one person lighting for the household. And usually the woman gets Shabbos candles once every single week. We get once a year to do Chanukah candles, so nobody should be feeling them. No, the woman shouldn't be feeling left out here. They get their Shabbos candles every 56 or 53 weeks out of the year. Okay. We begin, as I said before, there's different customs in terms of when to light the Chanukah candles. We have a Machlekes Rishonim, Machlekes how to understand the ruling of the Mechaber and Shulchan Aruch. One approach is that as soon as it's Shkia, that's the time of lighting. You have a half hour from Shkia. You should have to light it right away, right after Shkia, and it has to be remain there for a half hour. Another approach is that no, you only light it starting from Tzesek Yechavim. Due to this Machlekes, you have some who light only after Tzesek Yechavim. This is the custom amongst the Sfardim. This is also the custom amongst some Ashkenazim, and others who light only right after Shkia. This was the custom of the Gra. This was the custom of the Rayats, and this is the custom of Chabad. We light right after sunset. Right after Shkia is in Eretz Yisrael, but in Chutz La'aretz it would be after Shkia, but like 20 minutes. It would be between Shkia. The idea would be to get in your half hour by Shkia time. So let's say if you have a 40-50 minutes between Shkia and Tzesek Yechavim, so as long as you get your half hour between that time, you're good.
I thought it was a half hour after night.
Correct. We're being machmir like both. We want to get in also the time from Shkia and also the time from after Shkia and Tzesek Yechavim. That's the idea. We want to gain both times.
5 more minutes to say.
But the Rebbe did 20 minutes before.
Right. The Rebbe didn't have the half hour after Shkia. They had 20 minutes.
Okay, Tuesday night, we'll
We
continue.
also don't have, we only have 20 minutes. We physically don't, there doesn't exist a half hour.
Part two. Is it better to, different? Is it in a place where you're for sure pursuing Nissan or put it between?
We just discussed it before.
I think it was
We just finished discussing it.
okay.
One wears the regular weekday garb, hat and jacket during the lighting, and married men wear a gartel. Okay, Meretz Hashem, we're going to continue the remainder of the halachos on Tuesday.